David Edward and Edward D.I. Gangi discuss Ed's book, The Gift Best Given.
Ed, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, David. Thank you. And thank you for having me here.
Well, of course. I mean, we were just talking, and we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. We have you have a wonderful, fun, interesting book you've written, and we're going to talk about the fact that you have managed to get it into a good number of local bookstores, which I am sure people that watch this will be interested in, because as we just spoke, while it might be a vanity thing or not, we can talk about that. The thrill of walking into a bookstore and seeing your book it does carry some weight, I think.
Absolutely so.
Yeah, I think so. So let's go ahead and get started. What is this book about?
Well, yeah, I described the book as a story of adoption, search, discovery, and reunion. As I approached my 70th birthday, I went on a journey to learn about who the woman was who had placed me for adoption at the time of my birth. And I had a very idyllic childhood and just never really gave much thought to it. There was the occasional passing thought of, gee, I wonder who my mom could be. And then I just went on with life. And one day something just kind of poked me, and it was time to go searching.
So now you said when you turned 70 is when you decided to start writing it, or is that
that's correct?
That's when you started. So how long did it take you? Because this isn't just writing a book. This involves a lot of research and a lot of people and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there was a ton of research. That was probably the most, it was a very gratifying piece of the process. I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed the research, but at one point, early in her life, my birth mother took a train from New York City to Vancouver, British Columbia, and I researched pretty much every stop along the way of that railroad journey, and really had a good time with it. And just one thing after another like that.
That's so interesting. And this is your first book, right? This first book you wrote?
It is, yes.
Okay. So you just woke up one morning when you were a spry 69 and in 364 days. And you said, you know what? Yeah, no, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to blow the whole thing open, because you didn't know it was going to be all happy. You had no idea what it was going to be.
No, I really didn't. I was very fortunate in that my adoption had been privately arranged. So there was a document that had my birth mother's name on it.
Okay.
And that opened up the window into finding her, but there were a lot of twists along the way that made it not an easy search at all.
Did you ever consider stopping?
No, not at all. I tell everybody, I discovered that my mother was a celebrity in her time and in her profession. And had I found out that she was just a high school girl who gave a baby away and then went to work at the post office or the Five and Dime, there would be no book. But given the type of career that she had and the travels that she had, I couldn't help but go pursue the story.
How did it make you feel as you were going through all of that? I don't normally ask that kind of question, but I'm honestly curious.
Well, the initial piece was just really kind of an academic and an exercise in curiosity, and seeing let's see what we can find out. But the more I found out, the more and more the book sort of became a tribute to my birth mother. She made a very difficult decision at a time when being single and pregnant was not something that was well regarded, and she was very, very selective as to where, when she placed me for adoption, I would be placed. And she came up with a list and checked off every box.
And this was, and to see if you were in your 70s, we're talking about pre-Civil War adoption.
Yes,
I'm just kidding. I can't help it. I'm an old guy too. Not.
So. Yeah, I was born in May of 1948.
1940. Okay, so this is post World War II.
So we're in World War II, and it's what they call the baby.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Baby snatch era.
That's yeah.
So mine was a little bit different than the stories you heard about. A lot of adoptions and a lot of adoptees, but. She fortunately had the wherewithal and the resources given her her career that preceded this, that she could kind of manage the process on her own rather than have somebody send her away to Aunt Martha's house across the country and
Right.
until she had a baby and then suddenly came home and everything was good again.
Right. Right. So how did you organize yourself to go after this? And when you started, what you thought it was going to be like compared to what it actually took to get through the whole story and get it into a book form that someone else might want to read. Did what you had to do change, and walk us through that process a little bit?
Well, it was interesting. I started from a memoir type of perspective, and the memoir was really built around my journey and how I approached each step of the process. And what I wound up with was a stack of little essays talking about I did this today and here's what I found, and then I did this, here's what I found. But as I started making those discoveries, I started talking about the discoveries themselves. And I sort of wound up with a deck of cards split in half. One was my journey, one was my discoveries. And honestly, when I was all done and I did hit a point where I said there's not much more to write, I thought in terms of a book with, okay, I'll tell my story first and my mother's story second. And my editor came back to me and said, do you mind if I make a suggestion? And I think that's the first thing we should all be aware of. If an editor makes a suggestion, that's why you're paying them.
Yeah, that's right.
And she said, let me take these two stacks of cards and let me shuffle them and interweave them. And so what it came out with was a very nicely flowing story of, here's my journey and here's my discovery, here's the journey, here's the discovery, and it ran in a very good flowing linear fashion.
Yeah.
And I was really pleased with what came out. Kind of embarrassed I'd never thought of it myself.
Well, that's, it's like anything else. All the advice you get, it's all simple once you hear it, right? But
I think sometimes you just get too close to something to really see its possibilities.
Yeah, forest trees. It's true. And when you're writing, and I've written a lot, your brain tricks you a little bit too. You think you're reading one thing, or it has its comfort zone and how it wants to see it. So sometimes it takes someone just to say, what if you did this? And of course, then your brain's like, oh yeah.
It was a no-brainer when she suggested it.
That's right. So walk us through the process. So you've written the book. You now have, because you've got nothing else to do, you said, I'm going to get this thing into bookstores. What is that like? I mean, individual negotiations. How does it go? How does someone get a book into a bookstore?
Well, I think a lot of your listeners will understand that as an independent author getting a book into a bookstore, it's a tough deal.
Yeah.
And my book is in a number of bookstores, not a large number, but I made the decision to publish wide, which meant not only will I publish with Amazon and on a print-on-demand basis, but I also submitted my book to Ingram Spark, which is where libraries and bookstores source their materials, because Amazon will not discount. Ingram does discount, and it's up to the author to specify what they're willing to do. From there, really, it's just kind of building relationships with various vendors. I think if somebody is interested in getting a book into a particular store, check their website, because a number of them have consignment programs. And they will take the book, put it on the shelf, and let it sit there for some fixed period of time. And if the book sells, they'll ask for more. If the book does not sell, they'll say, come pick it up before we donate it. And so I've been fortunate that a handful of the stores have been very, very good in terms of either purchasing the book from Ingram, and in that case, it makes it theirs, or purchasing directly from me. And there've been a handful of others who have taken it on consignment. And I think the most gratifying part is I just recently heard from one of the bookstores saying, congratulations, your 6-month consignment period is over. Your book sold well, so we want you for another 6 months.
Okay.
And it's a good feel.
Did any bookstores say no?
You know what? I didn't approach any bookstores who I thought might.
Yeah. Okay. So by the time, so you worked, so you did your homework. By the time you got to actually approaching them, you knew how to probably how to negotiate it.
Yeah, I think for the most part, my reach was local.
Right.
But we've got some that are at a pretty good distance, but they seem to be sympathetic and supportive of independent authors.
Okay. So now the book's out. It's in bookstores. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it pretty much anywhere. Is there anything that surprised you? Oh, and this book came out in 2020.
The May of 2020, right in the midst of the early stages of
Yeah,
the pandemic.
you nailed the pandemic with that one. Yeah, that was
yeah, it's a home run.
So has anything surprised you about having a book out and being a published author?
There were not a great deal of surprises. I think the surprise as far as the reaction to the book is, my mother was a celebrity ice skater. And I expected that my market would be the celebrity or the ice skating community. And there's actually a very sizable community out there. But what I found actually was a bigger response from people who are involved in some way or interested in adoption. And even there, I found a very interesting split in the reaction in that community.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. I didn't know how big the celebrity ice skating market was, but the adoption market's huge. I mean,
yes, it is. And again, that's one of those things. I was so focused on her ice skating career. I just really never gave much thought to the adoption side.
Interesting. Wildly interesting. So would you have any advice for someone that has a life experience or situation like yours that they think is, I'm going to say uplifting. I know you didn't necessarily know that's where this was going, but it's just a fun story that you've put out there. But if someone else thinks they have a fun story, have any advice for them how they would get started in writing a book?
Yeah, well, I think fun or otherwise, I'd sit down and put your butt in the seat and start.
Yeah.
I think the one piece of advice I would certainly give is if there are people who could help you fill in the blanks with that story, is don't be shy, go and ask. And I was shy and I didn't ask. And, one of the interesting reactions I got, I had a couple of cousins who, after the book was published, called me and said, "We are so sorry. We always assumed you knew you were adopted. We knew." And, that was one of the pieces I just didn't really, as a young kid, know that I'd been adopted.
Wow, that's so interesting.
So there were lots of things that people would have been able to tell me had I asked.
Right. Well, but at least you did listen to the people that gave you good advice. So you didn't ask for some people, but you did listen. I think listening is a key to starting a process like this. Especially, it's a personal story of yours too. It's not just a story, right? So you kind of
it's a very personal story, yes.
And you're putting yourself out there a little bit. So it's all wildly fascinating. Well, so Ed, are you working on another book?
Yeah, I have started working on a sequel, and this is not going nearly so quickly as the first. My birth mother had a very interesting career. This book, The Gift Best Given, was my story and hers. After she gave me up for adoption, within months, she was back performing and touring, and traveled Central and South America and Europe, and I want to capture that, but I also want to capture the experience of a woman who was given a child up for adoption, because I think a lot of people think of that as just an event and a one-time thing, and I think that's something that stays with somebody for a very long time.
Well, and certainly culturally, the 1940s, 50s were a different time than now. So
very much so. It's much more enlightened now, and
right.
We'll see what happens with adoption as we move forward, because the whole landscape has changed again.
Yeah, I know. That's right. We're recording this July 12th. If anyone wants to go look at what happened. All right. Well, look, it's seriously a pleasure talking to you, and I think this is a wonderfully exciting book. If you do make headway on that next one, let me know, and we'll do another.
I certainly will.
We'll have another conversation.
Certainly will. I enjoy the conversation with you, David. Thank you.
All right, Ed. Thank you very much. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.